1 second, guys. I'll be on here shortly. All right, guys. I'll be on here in just a second. Got to get a link put up there. Give me a few minutes. Got to share it on my page. I'm all out of whack today. Hang on a minute. There we go. Copy. I'm a little sniffly too, so apologize if I'm... There we go. All right. Probably going to hear my kid too. Just heads up. Mr. Mom tonight. Pandemonium in the household. But we'll get started here in just a minute. All right. Posted. I think we're all a little sniffly after last week. Still recovering from chasing Harvey. Sounds like a bad rom-com. Alright. Just the it is okay. Yeah. Alright. Perfect. All right, we'll get started here in a second, guys. I had shared it to my Facebook page late, so I think people are still kind of loading in. Super, thank you for that GFS ensemble mean image. That will come in handy. I think I have some semblance of a timeline here. Again, really thrown together today. I've gotten a lot of questions from people on my Facebook page, via Reddit, a lot more than I've usually seen, which is, you know, interesting. I think there's a lot of confusion about this system that's out there still, and you know, we're talking about like 10th of September or 11th of September time frame of impact at the U.S. You know, a solid 10 days out. So, you know, this is going to be a tiresome process for a lot of people that track this stuff. Meteorologists are, you know, probably already tired of it because they were talking about it during the Harvey event, which was also a very long duration event. But we'll go ahead and get started here real quick. So this is what Irma looks like right now. You know, it's already reached Category 3 status. Haven't actually seen the latest National Hurricane Center update. I know it went down to Category 2 earlier today, but then we saw some rapid re-strengthening today. So, you know, if it's Category 4 by now, it's not surprising considering its structure. It's already gone through, it's on its third eye wall replacement cycle, which, for those of you that don't know what that is, it's basically when the inner wall of the system erodes the eye that exists and replaces it. And when it replaces it, the ERC cycle, it is then a larger eye wall, right? So that's how storms grow their wind fields. That's how storms increase the amount of banding that they have. And that's how they just increase in overall size and in intensity. So that's where it's at right now. Barreling over there. Just now heading just a little bit southwest, which I saw a statistic today. I don't know exactly the latitude, but this is the first time that a hurricane of its size that has formed this far east that has taken a southwest motion in the satellite era. So I think that's worthy of note, and I think that might come into play later on. We won't get there yet. A little early for that. Let's talk about this. So this is the European mean spread from earlier today. So when you look at this, you can see how there are really two camps as far as Irma is concerned, where the European ensembles think this is going to go. So this was actually the operational run from yesterday. So this isn't the updated one. And I apologize for that. I should have an updated image, but it's still going to tell the same story. So forget this red line here because that was the operational run from like a day ago. But there are two camps. One camp, let me pull up my pointer focus here. There we go. So one camp is saying Gulf of Mexico track. And you can see that with the shaded cyan right there. The majority of the tracks are pointing this right north of Bahamas and then kind of swooping up along the Florida coast. And then there's some others that are giving it even a more northerly shift this way, which would then bring it to landfall between South Carolina to the Outer Banks. And then there's others as well here that kind of veer it off this way. Now, I'm going to say this about the European right now versus the GFS, which we'll talk about next. And that is that it has been pretty rock solid for the majority of its track through 168 hours, which is right here. Okay, very little change, if any at all. At the 172 mark, which on recent runs has been right in this area, is a little bit of a divergence, and that's normal because there are upper level elements that are steering this, known as 500 millibar heights, and there's a trough that's interacting. You know, we won't get too much into that because these things are going to change a lot over the next 5 days. So I don't want to sit here and break down the trough, where it's at on a certain run, what it says here. That I am all about trends in this scenario. And I think we get a little too hung up on the particulars within model runs versus looking at the story that they're telling over multiple days. And the story that the European is telling over multiple days is a Florida to mid-Atlantic landfall. That's what it's saying as far as if you want to get into averages. Okay, the GFS, which is listed, actually, this is another European run. I apologize. We won't get into this one. So I want to get into the GFS ensemble. All right, and real quick, just to show you, this was the rerun of this morning's Euro run, very early, and you can see the operational run is way off the center of the mean runs that are here. Okay, so it's still kind of showing that Florida to mid-Atlantic look. Some more even going to the Gulf of Mexico. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but that is still a possibility as of this point, we cannot rule it out. Now onto the GFS. So if you followed me long enough, you know that I don't put a lot of love to the GFS, and that's mainly because it's not its fault. It is not as an accurate or verifying model as the European. On average, 6 to 8% less verification scores over the given year, and that's a lot of misses versus what the European shows. So you have to take that data and understand that that means something. What does that mean here? Well, let me show you. This is from yesterday. Buddy, going upstairs.
I want the iPad.
1 second, guys. Sorry about that. Anyway, so this is the GFS from 4 runs ago, so that would put it around noon yesterday. As you can see, quite a few members that hit, but even more that don't. And I will tell you, the GFS has really had a struggle as far as handling the upper level heights, or I'm sorry, the upper level conditions that exist over the United States right before Irma approaches the coast, which is going to change drastically the landfall scenario. So, to show you just how off the rocker it is, as far as shifts, this is again from yesterday around noon, and this is today. Noon yesterday, 6 p.m. today. Just do it one more time. Noon yesterday, 6 p.m. today. There are 2 members that don't make landfall. That's quite the difference. That's a seismic shift, as some put it, as far as a model run's concerned. You can see here, though, down below, let me move it into the viewfinder, definitely a lot of consistency with where it's going to be. Some members more north, some members more south. But it's really kind of channeled in here right above the Bahamas, above Hispaniola, above Haiti, above Cuba, making its way, and just really kind of not really making a beeline, but steadily moving towards the East Coast. That's a huge shift. And that just goes to show you that, look, the GFS is struggling with the dynamics of this. There will be that windshield wipering where it will one op run will show it going here, next op run will show it going here, next op run might go here, but it will eventually narrow. And you can already see that narrowing on this frame. Look how clustered these are. Anyway, it's a Friday night. So it's clustering. You can see the paths are starting to come together where it was much wider as far as what the approach was. It's narrowing. I think I've brought that point home. This was an EPS mean, and you can see much more landfalls here yesterday from the EPS. Again, just one of those things that you really have to keep in mind, that the European has been pretty steady as far as its mean is concerned. All right. And then real quick, I just want to go over this. This is significant because let's talk for a minute about the intensity of the system. Now, look, we've talked a little bit about track. Guys, there's going to be some back and forth as where this ends up landing. But there will be a landfall. Whether it will be United States landfall at this point, it is really narrowing down. I think right now, the best chances for the U.S. are an out-to-sea solution, which at this point is steadily being marginalized. And I think as we get a little bit closer to the event, I think we're going to really see between Florida and I hate to even say like the Mid-Atlantic to the New Jersey region really starting to zero in on those areas, unless there's some major changes to the upper level dynamics of the system. And again, I'm not going to get into that because they're going to change every single run. I'm just going by trends right now. But I want to talk about this because this is important. This is Irma sitting right here. And you can see where, this region here is pretty, I wouldn't even call it unfavorable, but these are shear winds that are across the region, just north of the system, just to the northeast and northeast, and also all around to the west. But Irma is going to be making a little bit of a southerly motion. It's been forecasted that way now for days. So it's, again, going to enter an area of low shear with above average sea surface temperatures, so it'll continue to increase in intensity. And then it's going to make its recurve, almost as though it's avoiding shear. It's a little strange, to be honest, because you do not see this west-southwest motion with large systems. Almost every single hurricane that spawns this far east makes its way, due west, and then it does a little recurve out to sea. You see it all the time. But because of the setup, this will be making its way west-southwest. And then it'll be making its way, again, just north, and then across, just north of Puerto Rico. It's really going to scrape it per models. And then it will be making its way into a little bit less of a favorable environment as of right now, just north of Bahamas. But again, nothing in its way right now, shear-wise, will we look at and say, that'll be the day that it weakens. It really won't. Maybe in the next day or so, as it makes its way west-southwest, it will go over this region where it might see 5 mile an hour, 5 knot shear. But guess what? In some cases that have been studied, 5 knot shear actually helps the hurricane ventilate all of the convection that's going on off the top of the cloud tops and underneath. So it could actually clean up the system and help it strengthen. So it's really not going to weaken too much unless it starts to do an eye wall replacement cycle, as we were just talking about. It does weaken it somewhat as it continues to grow that wind field. So let's talk about size, guys. And this is important because sometimes size gets overlooked with hurricanes. They focus so much on the category. And actually, I want to do a size comparison here. I've got a good image. Give me just 1 second to pull this up. There you go. Okay, so this is Harvey. And you can see right, where is it here? Yeah, so okay. So you can see right here, the curve of Texas to the bay there, that's pretty much the mean size of Harvey. I would say from end to end, this is probably 250, maybe 300 miles in diameter. And then you look at the modeled size of Irma, and it's literally like 80-90% the size of the entire Gulf of Mexico wind field. And this is significant because if this system decides that it wants to make landfall in the United States anywhere from, say, Florida to Maine, we're just going to throw that, the eastern seaboard, even if this were to hit the Outer Banks, the effects would be felt majorly, all like Matthew down in Florida with beach erosions, etc. Along the Georgia coast, South Carolina. I mean, those effects would be felt. Tropical storm winds would be felt as far as Miami if it made landfall in Outer Banks. That's the size of the system. That's something that you have to consider when thinking of the sheer size of this and the effects. Whereas Harvey was much smaller and its wind field was much more consolidated, that will not be the case for Irma. Because, and real quick, while I'm talking here, I'm going to pull up a satellite image. As this continues to have those as it continues to have the eye wall replacement cycles, it will continue to grow. And I mean, this thing has time to have, I've seen it joked, like 10 eye wall recycle periods. And if it continues to do that, it will just continue to grow in size. And that is something that has to be considered with the system. If it doesn't make landfall where you are, or if it doesn't make landfall within 100 miles of where you are, that doesn't mean you won't feel the effects. Will it stall like Harvey and dump 40 inches of rain? No, that was literally a once in a 1,000-year event, per some of the data that's coming back as far as how much rain fell. But you see it happen all the time out at sea, where a tropical system will kind of curve, or maybe not even curve, just go to a spot and hang out for 2 days. This time it just happened to be over a metropolitan area that had 6 million people, right? So it won't be like Harvey, but its wind field will be like 4 Harveys. It will be humongous. So that's, something to think about. By the way, I really can't wait until GO-16 satellite, it's entering into its mesoscale sectors, so it can actually zoom in on this thing. Definitely been waiting for that. For now, we have to deal with the lesser resolution floater imagery, which is, how do we put, much less impressive. But this is Irma right now, and look, you can see there was a pretty well-defined eye there earlier this afternoon. Probably the size of Harvey, I would say, right now, and it's 10 days away from landfall. And this thing was a tropical storm early in the morning yesterday. So the idea right now that this system is going to be massive, as indicated by the GFS, as indicated by the Euro, it's pretty much inevitable. Wherever it goes, it's going to be big. And that's going to kind of be my closing thoughts here on this is, guys, we don't know where this thing is going, okay? We have an idea based on current steering, current observations. We haven't even had recon planes make its way out and gather data and get that back into the models and allow it to kind of narrow this down. None of that has kind of come to fruition yet. Matter of fact, there are steering elements in the Pacific right now that will make their way over North America that will end up determining the fate of Irma. And that's how far out we are from a potential landfall here. We've got plenty of time. But I just want to reiterate that if this is indeed a U.S. landfall, wherever it may be, and just in terms of surge, in terms of winds, in terms of surf, it will more than likely be a top 5 to top 3 landing that's ever occurred. Not talking rainfall, because dynamics as we see it right now is this thing would move quickly inland. It would not hang around, thank goodness. But a massive system with sustained winds, and it would do a lot of damage wherever we go. And let's just hope that the out to sea options start to weigh in a little bit more because it's getting a little scary to see these models zoom in on the U.S. coast this far out, and just continue to repeat that time after time. So real quick, I'm going to put it to questions. I haven't even looked at the pop-out chat. You guys have any questions for me? Anything in particular? I know I've got a few people here from my chat that I participate in. Let me downsize this. What's the largest hurricane of all time? What do you mean by largest? You talking Atlantic? Are you talking Pacific? Are you talking strongest winds? Are you talking lowest pressure? That's kind of a loaded question. If you're talking about the largest system ever, it's Typhoon Tip, 1,200 miles in diameter, roughly that size. Now, it definitely is lagging. Anybody that's watching, there is about a minute difference from when I talk to when it actually reaches you. That's just normally how it is. So. And again, I apologize, guys, for kind of throwing this together. I'm going to have a more focused one on Monday evening. We'll have a bunch of stuff to bring forward when we're a little bit closer to this. Lawrence, so Typhoon Tip definitely was the largest of all time. 1,200 miles in diameter. Roughly the size of from, what was it, Nevada to nearly Arkansas. It was huge. But that's really it, guys. Biggest thing to take away, trends as listed on the screen are trending this way, west. Not to mention the Europeans kind of been honed in on that trend for some time now. Haven't taken a look at any of the other storms on the pipeline.
Daddy, my phone keeps acting out, and I don't know why.
Let me come upstairs and change it in just a second, okay? Can I finish? Everyone, by the way, this is my son. Oh, he doesn't want to come to the camera. Little Zcast Jr. Would you agree that South Carolina landfall will result in hurricane force winds across most of the state? I would say, Tristan, that if this were a South Carolina landfall, you would feel hurricane force winds as far inland near Atlanta, the size of the system. He's avoiding me right now because I mentioned him. Hey. Yeah, Kyle, we are far out. And I'm glad you brought that out. We got a lot of time, so enjoy your weekend, whatever it may be. Sitting at home, hitting the road, camping, whatever. You know, enjoy it. This is far out, regardless of what the result will be. So, thank you guys again. You know, this is going to be interesting to track. I've never seen a storm like this been generated on models for the Atlantic. I mean, me personally, I've never seen it. I think a lot of meteorologists online are saying the same thing, that it's just it's insane as far as how often you see the track happening and where it's zeroing in on and how strong it'll be. So thank you guys again. Have a good one. I will have another one of these come Monday evening. Enjoy your weekend.